Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we have lined up for you tonight. Iran retaliates against U.S. military bases in Qatar Monday following U.S.'s attack on Iranian nuclear facilities over the weekend. It's by-election day in 3 Alberta ridings. Current opposition leader Naheed Nenshi looks to take the seat left vacant after Rachel Notley stepped down as party leader. A long, secret network of tunnels 100 feet below the streets of London could be the city's next big tourist attraction.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks so much for joining us. Tensions continue to rise in the Middle East following Saturday's U.S. attack on Iranian nuclear facilities. Iran says it retaliated by launching an attack on U.S. forces at the Al Udeid air base in Qatar. These are some of the satellite photos of the base from last week, and it shows many of the aircraft normally stationed there have now left. Qatar temporarily closed its airspace Monday evening amid threats of Iranian retaliation after weekend airstrikes. Qatar's foreign ministry earlier confirmed the airspace closure was done as a precaution and happened several hours after the U.S. and U.K. urged their citizens in the energy-rich nation to shelter in place without elaborating. According to our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari of the Foreign Desk, Iran's retaliation was to be expected.
As expected, we were waiting for some sort of retaliation. The United States asked their personnel in the Middle East to be on alert, and in particular, Qatar, where is our most significant base with about 10,000 or more personnel at that base. They were asked to evacuate hours ago, and right now we just got word that about 6 to 10 missiles were shot by the Islamic Republic in the direction of our U.S. base there in Qatar. So waiting to hear about the fallout, but we did see some preliminary and unconfirmed videos about the sky space over Qatar. A lot of those missiles being intercepted, of course, and we'll see what this means. Obviously, this is that saving face from the Islamic Republic.
Catch my full interview with Lisa Daftari of the Foreign Desk coming up right after business news. Since Saturday's bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities, U.S. President Donald Trump has raised the possibility of a change in leadership in Iran. On Sunday, Trump posted a question on social media asking, why wouldn't there be a regime change? White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked about that today.
Caroline, when the president is floating the idea of regime change, how does he believe that should be accomplished? Through the Iranians, the Israelis, or the Americans?
The president's posture and our military posture has not changed. The president was just simply raising a question that I think many people around the world are asking. If the Iranian regime refuses to give up their nuclear program or engage in talks, we just took out their nuclear program on Saturday night, as you all know. But if they refuse to engage in diplomacy moving forward, why shouldn't the Iranian people rise up against this brutal terrorist regime?
If Iran shuts down the Strait of Hormuz, is there a plan by the U.S. to add oil to the global market? We saw the Biden administration do a strategic petroleum release. Is there a plan?
I can assure you the administration is actively and closely monitoring the situation in the Strait of Hormuz, and the Iranian regime would be foolish to make that decision. We'll see you all later, okay?
There are fears that Iran could block oil exports through the Strait of Hormuz, a major commercial trade passage that it partially controls. Meanwhile, the exiled son of Iran's last Shah, who was deposed in a 1979 revolution, has today offered himself up as interim leader to take over running the country. Reza Pahlavi is appealing to the international community to help the Iranian people force out Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and his religious dictatorship.
This regime is defeated, teetering on the edge of collapse, and must not be allowed to continue. The time has come to end this ruin and begin a new era for Iran. This is a new dawn for Iran's lion and son. I am here today to submit myself to my compatriots, to lead them down this road of peace and democratic transition. I do not seek political power, but rather to help our great nation navigate through this critical hour towards stability, freedom, and justice.
And the rhetoric between nations is heating up as well. The Iranian foreign minister's Abbas Araghchi met with Russian President Vladimir Putin today in Moscow. Putin shared his thoughts on the U.S. attack.
Неспровоцированная абсолютно агрессия против Ирана не имеет под собой никаких оснований и никаких оправданий.
Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev has suggested a number of countries were considering supplying Iran with nuclear warheads. In a response on social media, President Trump said the U.S. bombing power displayed over the weekend could pale in comparison to the lethal force of U.S. nuclear submarines. And with all of this going on, there's also the NATO summit this week in the Netherlands. President Trump heads to this two-day gathering with many questions needing to be addressed, including the future of U.S. troops based in NATO countries.
First, it was Russia's invasion of Ukraine, then increased defense spending. But as Donald Trump heads to a NATO summit in Europe on Tuesday, the focus has swung to his decision to strike 3 nuclear enrichment facilities in Iran. The immediate consequences of the attacks shadowing the U.S. president's 2-day trip to The Hague in the Netherlands.
This summit is a really slimmed-down summit to the ones that happened in the previous years. This summit is now focused on one thing, and that's appeasing Trump.
NATO countries have become accustomed to the unpredictable when it comes to Trump, who has made no secret of his disdain for the 32-member alliance. Most members are preparing to endorse the increased funding pledge of 5% of GDP, up from 2%, motivated not just by Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine to bolster their own defenses, but perhaps appease the United States and its tempestuous leader.
We've been supporting NATO so long, in many cases, I believe, paying almost 100% the cost.
The CSIS's Bergman believes that NATO members, by agreeing to defense funding increases, may be in fact hastening the removal of U.S. troops from Europe.
I think the big thing overshadowing this summit is that the Pentagon is looking at its force posture presence in Europe and around the world and is looking to make major cuts.
Prime Minister Mark Carney is in Belgium today for the EU-Canada summit. From Belgium, he'll then head to the Netherlands for the NATO summit. In other news, Canada's next national census is set for May of 2026. The federal cabinet has issued an order fixing the date for the census and the questions it will ask. The last census was held in 2021 and collected population data on age, gender, marital status, family structure, and types of dwelling. Stats Canada says the results are used to plan government services involving employment, schools, public transportation, and hospital services. Albertans are casting ballots in 3 by-elections today. After advanced polling wrapped up on Saturday, polls opened this morning in Edmonton, Ellerslie, Edmonton, Strathcona, and Olds, Didsbury, Three Hills. The polls will remain open until 8 p.m. Advanced polling data shows about 10% of the 34,000 eligible voters in Edmonton, Ellerslie turned out to cast early votes, and about 10% of the 29,000 eligible voters in Edmonton, Strathcona did the same. And roughly 13% of eligible voters turned out to advance polls in Olds, Didsbury, Three Hills. In Edmonton, Strathcona, NDP leader Naheed Nenshi is vying for the seat left vacant following the resignation of previous leader Rachel Notley. Official election results are expected to be announced on July the 3rd. The Medicine Hat Health Foundation announced a tremendous contribution towards the Medicine Hat Regional Hospital on Monday. The Ural Family Foundation, headed by Bill and Elizabeth Ural, has donated $5 million in a move to enhance cardiac care services in southeastern Alberta. As part of the Bringing Hearts Home campaign, the funds will go towards new equipment, renovations, and increased space in order to improve urgent and preventative care in the city.
Heart disease is for sure one of the leading causes of death in Canada. It's the #2 reason for death in Alberta. but very unfortunately in southern Alberta, it's the #1 killer. Our mortality rate in southern Alberta is 26.6% higher than the rest of the province. We are desperately in need of more equipment, more services, and more cardiologists to provide the care to try to prevent the excess death and bend that curve on mortality and save lives. I'm so incredibly grateful that the Yule Foundation and the Yule family would believe in the vision. They have been such a pillar of the community for decades. They have been so incredibly generous. They have invested in the community, whether it's in education and it's in health.
You know, we look for things to try to make the community a little better, maybe provide things they didn't have or different ways of doing things. And of course, healthcare is getting to be a big deal. The population is getting a little older. But other than that, it was just part of the service, provide a service for people in Medicine and area. When they get on later in life, they have some healthcare issues. And so now when you're dealing with the cardiac side, there's a lot more service in Medicine now than there used to be.
The Health Foundation has a campaign goal of $30 million over the next 2 years. Some aid coming from the provincial budget to enhance ICU capacity in Medicine Hat and Lethbridge to the tune of $5 million. The city of Lethbridge is offering a new toolkit aimed at keeping children and families safer in an increasingly digital world. An updated online safety toolkit is now available through the Lethbridge Police Service website. The toolkit offers practical guidance on high-risk behaviors and covers topics including violence, cybersecurity, gang recruitment, and fraud. Chris Andrade, Justice Program Officer with LPS, explains why this tool is so important.
Certainly, over the last few years, we've always seen a really heavy presence of online activity that youth are in and getting in trouble in. We've seen this has come into play with cyberbullying, sextortions, all kinds of different areas. And as a police service, we're always responding to those and then giving parents some information after the fact when something has happened. With a resource like this, we're hoping that parents and youth in the community can access these resources proactively and maybe try and avoid having further victimization or issues online. As soon as we have a youth that's accessing a cell phone, a tablet, or the internet, we should have parents that are aware of the dangers that are online. Unfortunately, even when it comes to kids being involved in online games, we have people that will use and exploit all of these sites to try and groom kids, and we just need to make parents and youth aware of those dangers when they're using those systems.
Whether you're a parent, an educator, or a youth, it's a resource that you're able to go to that has relatable and practical resources for online safety. It goes from anywhere from parental controls to what risks are happening currently in the landscape of the digital world with youth and how to help take a preventative approach in educating children, but also as educating yourself as adults and supporting youth.
The original toolkit was launched in October 2020 as part of the Building Safer Communities initiative. Summer was welcomed with heavy rain. The storm that hit this past weekend left everything from downed trees to flooding in its wake. However, the city of Lethbridge deployed its crews who worked hard during and after the rains to keep the community safe. Leanne Lambertson, Water and Wastewater Operations Manager for the city of Lethbridge, says the city began preparing for the rain last Tuesday, recognizing that a storm was coming.
Sunday afternoon when the winds picked up, that's when we saw lots of downed trees after 2 days of rain. That was probably our biggest challenge. The wastewater treatment plant saw significantly increased flows. They called in extra people to make sure that everything was working properly, and they did a really good job of treating all the extra flow that was coming to the plant. What we will do in the next week or so is review our response, take a look at what we did really well, where we could improve for next time. Right now, the system's back to normal. The ponds in neighborhoods are back down to normal levels, and that's how the system is designed to work.
Over 44 millimeters of rain fell on Saturday alone, and according to the 311 team, 81 sewer-related and 26 tree-related calls were received during the storm. The 311 team likely received multiple calls for the same issue. With all the wet weather late last week, the city of Lethbridge has decided to lift the River Valley fire ban effective immediately. But the city also says precautions should still be taken when having outdoor fires. Make sure to use clean, dry wood and also ensure your fire is completely extinguished before you leave. You're also reminded to be extra cautious when disposing of smoking materials. The county of Lethbridge, has also lifted its fire ban. Fire permits can once again be applied for online. Recreational campfires, burning barrels, and incinerators are now allowed, but only untreated wood and yard waste like leaves, branches, and weeds can legally be burned. A long secret network of tunnels 100 feet below the streets of London could be the city's next big tourist attraction. Local authorities have approved plans to fill some World War II bomb shelters with a museum, an interactive World War II memorial, and one of the world's deepest underground bars.
These tunnels were built as a result of the London Blitz, which started in September 1940. The British government clearly needed to build some deep-level shelters to protect people. And so between 1940 and 1942, the British government built these tunnels and some others in London to protect people. Does London need something new? I think every city always needs something new. And if people are visiting London, they definitely visit in its association with the royal family, Buckingham Palace, the wonderful museums. So I think to add something of this type of history and heritage and novelty and difference, and one of the only one in the world that you can visit, then I think it can only add to those things that people want to come and see in London. As far as we can tell, this would be the deepest licensed bar in a metropolitan city in the world.
London Tunnels aims to open in 2028 and to attract up to 4.2 million tourists a year. Wow, what a concept that is. And it wouldn't even matter what the weather was like outside either. Like that 44 millimeters of rain we received in Lethbridge over the weekend, that wouldn't have even mattered. Speaking of which, I will be right back with your full weather report. Well, we practically had to swim our way out of a very soggy weekend all over Alberta. This is what we were dealing with. Look at that angry sky up there near Hinton. This photo courtesy of Linda Gemonet, who says, quote, "We've been totally blessed with all the rain we've been getting lately. So nice to hear of rain coming instead of forest fires." Well, you got that right, Linda. Down here in Lethbridge, we received 44.4 millimeters just on Saturday alone. All that moisture is going to make our farmers and ranchers so happy. And we still got a little bit of sunshine on Sunday. And today was lovely as well as we climbed our way to 20 degrees. Tonight could see a slight chance of more showers this evening with a risk of a thunderstorm, but getting back to above seasonal temperatures on Tuesday. We could see also a 30% chance of showers. High of 25 degrees, 20 to 40 km/h winds expected. On Wednesday, beautiful 26 degrees, 25 on Thursday. Both of those days nice and sunny. Back to partly cloudy skies on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday with highs of 23, 22 respectively, and then getting into Sunday back up to 26 degrees. Gonna be a hot one by Sunday there for sure. Also Wednesday coming up. Okay, so average high for this time of year is right there on the screen there, 24 degrees, average low 10 degrees. High temperature on this day, the record high was 36 degrees back in 1936, and the record low was only 1 degree. That is hard to believe for the end of June. That happened back in 1916. Sun rose this morning at 5:24. Sunset this evening will be at 9:43 p.m. So we've still got 16 hours, 19 minutes of daylight. We're in that time of year where we're having several days in a row with the same length, at least in this area of the country for sure. Okay, in Victoria, high of 20 degrees, mainly sunny skies. Could see increasing clouds by the afternoon and a bit of wind as well in the Juan de Fuca Strait. 22 for the high in Vancouver. Could see some showers there, and Edmonton high of 22. 30% chance of showers, risk of thunderstorms. Same thing in Calgary, 30% showers, risk of thunderstorms by the afternoon, high of 21 degrees. Okay, parts of Saskatchewan are seeing a tornado watch this afternoon and this evening, including Saskatoon. So watch for alerts, be prepared to take cover if some crazy weather starts to approach, so be on the lookout for that. Mainly cloudy skies by tomorrow, though, high of 17 in Saskatoon. Regina sitting at 19 and mainly sunny skies. Winnipeg could see a lovely 25 degrees tomorrow with beautiful sunshine as well. A severe heat warning is in effect for parts of Ontario, including both Toronto and Ottawa. It's the first major heat event of the season. We could be seeing highs of 32 to 36 and humidex values of 42 to 46 with overnight temperatures of 22 to 25, so providing very little reprieve by the evenings there. Also during the day, Toronto could see the humidity build up to a thunderstorm and a chance of showers there. 33, like I was saying, 34 for the high there. That's not including the humidex at all. Sunshine in Ottawa. Sunny skies also expected in Montreal tomorrow with that high of 34. Montreal also seeing a heat warning in effect there. Could see very high humidex values up in the 40s there tomorrow in Montreal. Now, Fredericton is seeing showers there, chance of thunderstorms, 34 for the high of 31 in Halifax, 30 expected in Charlottetown. Beautiful sunshine in both of those cities, and a mix of sun and cloud in St. John's with a high of 21 degrees. So there you have it. That is your forecast. BC billionaire Ruby Leo has been granted court approval to take over leases for 3 Hudson's Bay properties in malls she owns. Ontario Superior Court Judge Peter Osborne granted Leo permission to buy the leases of the Tawasin Mills Mayfair Shopping Center and Woodgrove Center locations for $6 million. Leo gave the thumbs up to reporters after winning the approval. She says she plans to use the leases to open a new department store she will name after herself and fill with dining, entertainment, and children's play spaces. A Statistics Canada report says Canadians are spending less time with friends than ever before, with the decline sharpest among the working age demographic. Here's Terry Theodore from the Canadian Press with more.
Only 19.3% of Canadians surveyed saw their friends on an average day in 2022, well down from the 47.9% in 1986. The StatCan report says the sharpest drop came for those between 25 and 64 years old, where the likelihood of seeing a friend on any given day fell from 42 to 14% over that 36-year period. The questions to those in the survey specify socializing as in-person with family and friends, separate from communicating using technology. The agency says the trend coincides with the rising number of Canadians worrying that they are not spending enough time with family and friends. The report also shows Canadians in 2022 feel the most pressed for time since the early 1990s, when data collection began, with almost a quarter of respondents saying they feel such pressure when compared with 15% 3 decades earlier.
Now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 111 points to 26,609. The Dow was up 374 points to 42,581. The S&P 500 was up 57 points to 6,025, and the Nasdaq was up 183 points to 19,630. West Texas Intermediate oil was down $6.82 to $67.21 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 21 cents to $3.68 US. Gold was down 48 cents to $33.6851 US an ounce, and silver was up 10 cents to $36.10 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.71 per bushel, barley is at $6.77, canola is at $16.60, and corn is at $7.62 per bushel. Live cattle June contract was down 72 cents to $222.30. Feeder cattle August contract was up 35 cents to $302.80, and lean hogs July contract was up 67 cents at $113.45. And the Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours and currently sits at 72.80 cents US. .
Here's an update to one of our top stories today. Tensions continue to rise in the Middle East following Saturday's U.S. attack on Iranian nuclear facilities. Iran says it retaliated by launching an attack on U.S. forces at the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. One of 19 missiles fired did hit the facility, but no casualties. Coming up next, our foreign affairs expert and editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, joins us to discuss what has taken place between the U.S. and Iran and what it could mean for the Iranian regime. You won't want to miss it. Also, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also visit our website or YouTube channel anytime to check out more of our stories and interviews. The United States entered the conflict between Israel and Iran over the weekend with American warplanes and submarines targeting 3 Iranian facilities in Iran. This, of course, to thwart the Islamic Republic from being able to build nuclear bombs. Now, here to provide some context and commentary is editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, who joins us from Los Angeles. Lisa, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeanette.
Okay, so Lisa, I understand there, on top of all of this, there is some breaking news. I understand that Iranian missiles are targeting back at the United States. What's happening right now?
Right, as expected, we were waiting for some sort of retaliation. The United States asked their personnel in the Middle East to be on alert, and in particular, Qatar, where is our most significant base with about 10,000 or more personnel at that base. They were asked to evacuate hours ago, and right now we just got word that about 6 to 10 missiles were shot by the Islamic Republic in the direction of our U.S. base there in Qatar. So waiting to hear about the fallout, but we did see some preliminary and unconfirmed videos about the sky space over Qatar. A lot of those missiles being intercepted, of course, and we'll see what this means. Obviously, this is that saving face from the Islamic Republic, retaliation for the U.S. Targeted precision attacks on their nuclear facilities over the weekend, something else we had anticipated, but obviously an escalation in this war nonetheless.
Yeah. Now, Iran, of course, had vowed to respond to the U.S., but Trump warned that any Iranian retaliation against U.S. assets, quote, will be met with even greater force than what was unleashed. And now we have North Korea strongly condemning the U.S. attack on Iran, calling it a violation of sovereignty on one of its only allies. So, Lisa, how serious do you think this could get? Could this involve other countries like North Korea?
The good news here is no one really, either side, wants an escalation in all of this. Obviously, if we look at all the players involved, you have the Israelis that are just fighting, obviously, for their existential security. Obviously, their neighbor wanting them off the map is not a good idea to have them have nuclear weapons. So they had to take that defensive position. The United States coming in as well, understanding that the Islamic Republic has been a threat for 46 years, decades of putting money and resources into proxies that have killed Americans. So they obviously have American blood on their hands, and not to mention the operatives that are here in the United States that we know about, also their lobbies, their propaganda campaigns, all of it. So this has been determined to be an American issue, also a core national security issue for us here as well. The United States got involved. And then you look at the Islamic Republic. Look, they are sadistic. They are not suicidal. They are not in this to escalate and to be literally blown away in that sense to get them out of power. They want to stay. So if self-preservation is their priority, they don't want this to escalate. They actually want to save face. They want to serve up that proverbial slap on the wrist, which they just did. And we'll see what the American reaction will be. In the meantime, the Israelis have continued with their very targeted attacks on Iran soil, which has been a first in this type of unilateral way to use the intel that they've gathered for years on these many sites, and actually taking it beyond the sites. So we know that Israel was targeting the nuclear and the military assets on Iranian soil, but they have done 2 or 3 things to make us believe that they are actually after the regime as a whole. They targeted a broadcast of the regime in appendage. The regime has these propaganda arms. A woman in the middle of her broadcast, spewing on blustering, all that regime propaganda, that news station was taken out. We also saw this morning an attack at the doors of Evin Prison. Evin Prison is a notorious prison that houses a lot of the political dissidents that have been rounded up by the regime and put there to be silenced. People are put into jail for for a Facebook post, for showing their hair, for singing a song. So I just want the audience to understand what kind of regime we're up against. So for the Israelis to basically blast open the door of that prison, how symbolic to say, we want to free your prisoners, we want to give them a better future, and this is the way we're going to do it. So it was basically escalating in a way that brings in the people of Iran and not just focusing on the military and nuclear facilities.
Yeah, and we did see there was some dramatic footage of that Israeli attack on that notorious prison, blowing the doors right off the hinges, it looked like. And you had mentioned that, it's not over yet because Israel also, continuing to unleash their force on it. I'm understanding that just Monday, Iran's nuclear site at Fordow was hit again. Israel unleashed strikes on the roads leading to the underground facility following a massive U.S. attack over the weekend. So clearly it's not over, Lisa.
So the issue in the aftermath of both Israeli and American strikes on these nuclear facilities is that we don't have the most accurate damage assessment. How can we be sure of what percentage of these sites were taken out and what was removed or continues to be moved from place to place? And in what way will we leave any sort of residual that will allow Iran's regime to continue to build on its nuclear program? That being the question, now the Israelis began to bomb around the area so that it would be difficult to remove any of this nuclear material from place to place, again, allowing them to give this nuclear material a second life.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because I believe a top expert on the Iran nuclear program believes that the Iranian regime's atomic program has been obliterated by Saturday night's strike by the U.S. So is this what you're hearing, or could there still be more facilities out there or more hidden materials to build, weapons? Did Trump maybe give them too much warning to hide anything? What are you thinking?
Perhaps. And look, this is not something, the fact that they have 12 sites and that Fordow or Isfahan are more complex, challenging sites where they go underground, the regime knew that such a day may be on the horizon, where Israel and the United States may want to take out their facilities because of their rogue, kind of chest thumping that we will have a nuclear weapon when nobody wants them to have a nuclear weapon. And it is a danger to all, particularly those in the region, for them to have a nuclear weapon. So they perhaps knew this day was coming and were moving material from place to place. A lot of people believe that a large percentage of their nuclear program was taken out. I'm hearing north of 90% by some accounts. And because of that uncertainty, because again, any residual would mean that they would pause and rebuild, because of that uncertainty, experts want to be very careful with how that confirmation of, yes, we could be certain that their nuclear program is done, they will not start again. Look, a significant portion of it has been taken out. That's a fact. A significant portion of their proxies have been taken out. They have been significantly diminished. These are all facts, but to what extent can they have 9 lives, these mullahs, right? We've watched them for 46 years continue to rebuild and rebuild and rebuild. You're talking about an alcoholic who has been, their stash of alcohol has been taken away, but will they have access to another bottle anytime soon is the question. So, what we're waiting to see. And I think that what Israel is doing when it does have that kind of dominance over Iran airspace is actually a very prudent move to make sure that, and I want to stop to say, nobody wants war. The Iranians have endured enough. But the fact that Israel has been able to be so precise in so many of these campaigns, truly precise. And you hear that from the Iranian people. We're okay. I mean, they don't have bomb shelters. The government's not helping. The government's actually targeting Iranian people, accusing them of spying for Israel, accusing them of coming out onto the streets. And there will be obviously consequences for those kinds of protests out on the streets. But that being said, Israel has to do what it needs to do for its own security going forward. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You hear that from so many of the leadership in Israel, and because they have access to that airspace, they need to take out what they can take out to truly and significantly diminish the power of this government as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. And then, Lisa, we have U.S. Democrats questioning the legality of the strikes, with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer saying, quote, "No president should be allowed to unilaterally march this nation into something as consequential as war with erratic threats and no strategy." What do you think?
Jeanette, if this was 10, 15, 20 years ago, we would have bipartisan support on a major national security threat that really endangers all Americans across the board and our assets in the region. It's not just a gift to Israel that we got involved in this war. It's not because Donald Trump is a warmonger that we got involved in this war. There are actual assessments about this. We have quotes from Hillary Clinton and others in the past who have talked about really going after Iran and bombing Iran because of their nuclear weapons program, because of the rogue nature of the regime, because of the proxies that have targeted American assets for so many years. So to really put this as a Trump issue, it's divisive. It's horrible to think that we are at a time where Americans who are in a position of leadership would rather target our president than to stand behind him against a rogue enemy. That being said, we also have the media. We have college campus protests that have always taken the wrong side. This is a disease of leftism that just blames us, and really supports those who rape and pour acid on the faces of women who dare to speak out, who don't allow a woman who is being raped to go against her rapist in a court of law, where the value of a woman is half that of a man in the court of law. These are so-called feminists. These are so-called champions of gay rights, when gay people are thrown off buildings and hanged for their sexual orientation. I mean, there is so much to break down here, but to say that, do your research before you open up your mouth. Just don't go down the list of social justice issues that you believe are social justice issues. I've been doing this for such a long time, and to see this evolution here at home about the positioning of where we are on foreign policy just because of our divide here at home, it's just asinine. And I think it's very damaging. And I hope that this next generation really shapes up, not to get their news from TikTok and Instagram, but to really read about the history, the context, and what we're up against when we're dealing with our enemies.
Yeah, it seems that's where everyone's getting their news from these days, unfortunately, the little sound bites on TikTok there. But Lisa, we have leaders hinting and arguing about this potential fall of the Iranian government. We've got like Senator Marco Rubio saying that it was not an attack on Iran, not an attack on the Iranian people, and this was not a regime change move. And then we've got Trump saying on his social media that, if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? So we've got some argument there. So Lisa, if the government did fall, would that leave a power vacuum, allowing someone maybe worse to take over?
That's always the possibility and the risk. But in the case of Iran, I just wrote an op-ed a couple of weeks ago before this war started saying not all regime changes are created equal. We're dealing with a Western world, particularly here in the United States, and particularly the Republicans who have PTSD that are triggered by the term regime change because of our failures in Iraq and Syria. And you can perhaps add Libya and Afghanistan to that list as well. These are places where we did not perhaps import regime change, but we saw that our involvement brought about some negative consequences of regime change. And for that reason, we stay away from those terms. We do what we need to do, but we won't touch regime change for fear that it will get worse. We have to look at Iran as a very, very different scenario. For over 46 years, let's say the majority of 20 of those years, we have seen uprisings by the Iranian people that have come out onto the streets saying that they don't have freedoms, they want democracy, they want secularism, they don't want to live under Sharia law, that they have never felt that this government, the mullahs, this theocracy represents them and what they want. Majority of the country, so 85% of 90 million people don't want this government. And as the years have gone by, when you're watching these protests, they have evolved. So we're even seeing those protests against the government in clerical cities that have always been traditionally with the government, more religious, more conservative, and now they're turning on the government as well. So I do think that the people are very different from the government. That has been said, and I think that part of it, I do appreciate that the Trump administration does come out and does differentiate between the people and the government. The people of Iran certainly do appreciate that, and to give them the space. Look, regime change always has to come from within, but we do know that they do want democracy. They do want secularism. They do want their rights, and that will be, better for the entire region. Imagine the potential that could be unleashed in a free and economy that the Iran and Iranian people could present to the world and to the region. So I think it's a win-win for everyone involved, including the United States. It's not something, again, that we would want to steer, but we would want to help support the Iranian people in their endeavor in really designing their own future.
Editor-in-Chief of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, thanks so much for joining us today from Los Angeles.
Thank you for having me.
We all applaud the amazing work of William Wilberforce, Thomas Clarkson in stopping the slave trade back in the 1800s, but has it really stopped? I mean, how much of a problem is slavery today? It's still going on. So joining me from Lethbridge to talk about this today is Executive Director of Not for Sale, Joy Lynn Stickles. So good to have you with us, Joy Lynn.
Oh, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, always important to talk about this stuff. I mean, first of all, tell us a bit more about your organization, Not for Sale. That started right here in Lethbridge, I believe. And so, what are you trying to accomplish, and what motivated you to get this started?
Yeah, so long story short, we started because I had gone to a conference and heard about human trafficking for the first time and sex slavery, and that kids were involved, and I had never heard about that before. So that was in 2009, and it grabbed my heart, and I came home to my husband and said, I don't know what we can do. I don't know what difference we can make, but we have to. We have to step out. Since then, we started a home in Cambodia and ran that for 3 years with another organization, and that home had 23 women and girls go through it, and we have amazing stories from that of women finding freedom and finding hope again, and children being safe. And yeah, and then since then we moved to our home to Mexico. It took us 8 years to get licensing with the government. It was just back and forth, a bunch of different factors with that, but we were able to open that home last year. At the beginning of the year, we opened it, and it was fantastic. So we've been running our home in Mexico for the last year, since January 2004. We've had 13 girls in that home. We currently have 6, and one of them has a baby. Yeah, and then we also have a home in Kenya that kind of happened organically. We have another ministry there that that helps girls who can't go to school because they're pregnant, but a little bit different than actual human trafficking. So this one, the police knew that this woman was caught in human trafficking. She was being trafficked by her aunt. She was pregnant because of that, and had a baby that was very, very malnutrition. And yeah, and so the police worked with us there, and now we have a home in Kenya helping those people out.
Wow, that's amazing. I look at that and I go like, yeah, what can we do? Well, you did something. You're not an expert in, these areas, but you just said, hey, let's do something. And, you get some people around you who are more, experts in these areas, and look what happens. So that's, yeah, good on you guys, man. Can you share a little bit about, I think you call them the Hope Totes. You apparently distribute to unhoused girls and women in, I guess it would be both Mexico and Kenya, or is it just Mexico?
Those are local, so we distribute those in Lethbridge here.
Okay.
With our ministry, My City Care, which I'm sure
Yeah.
about. So partnered with My City Care, we help the women, and there's not as many young girls who are unhoused in Lethbridge.
Yeah.
But yeah, so these are hygiene kits that serve a practical need, but also open the door for relationships so that these women can just kind of step out and toward safety and stability on their own and know that they have a place to come to with our ministries there. So yeah, over the lifetime of Hope Totes, we've distributed over 8,000 of
Oh,
them.
wow.
around
Nice.
locally.
Okay. And I understand that, I mean, you're hoping to open some safe houses in Canada as well?
Yeah, that is a dream for sure. Even coming from Cambodia to Mexico and learning the different governments, Canada is a whole new ball game that we're learning as well. So yeah, we're stepping out and making connections. There's so many good organizations in Canada, but it's breaking the mold to open a home for underage victims.
Okay, excellent. Now, for viewers who maybe don't know how widespread this is, the child, sex trade, human trafficking, it's not just children, of course, it's, older women as well. And I mean, what kind of numbers are we're talking about in Canada, and then how many globally?
Yeah, so it's always tricky to find numbers, even when you go and look at Statistics Canada and all that. But it is estimated that there are 50 million people in human trafficking globally, and 2 million children are trafficked every year. So it's worldwide. It's all over the place. It's more visual in different, like when we were in Thailand and Cambodia, you can see it on the streets. In Mexico, but a lot of the stuff in Canada, they say within a block, there is one person that, within a block of you where you live, there's one person that's trafficked.
Yeah, we don't think of it here in Canada, but it is actually happening. And I know it's not even necessarily, I'm told, always sexual in nature. Of course, that's the worst though. But sometimes apparently, underage kids are used for labor. Working in factories, sometimes not getting paid or getting paid very little, just enough food to kind of get by. I mean, that's not good either.
Yeah, no, you see that globally for sure. The factory side of things, the kids sitting on the street begging. But in Canada, one of our team leads, she was trafficked in Canada when she was 4. And she was sexually trafficked, but also she was taught how to break into cars. She was a drug mule for them. So that kind of labor trafficking happens here, happens with kids. And yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah. Now, in other countries, whether it's Mexico or Kenya, something like that. So what actually happens? I mean, do the kids literally get kidnapped, or is it, I've heard of some cases where the parents are actually really, really poor. And I think at times maybe misled completely by somebody who's saying, hey, your kids are going to be way better off. We're going to get them a better life. They promise that. But of course, they end up simply being trafficked.
Yeah, so you hear different stories, different scenarios all over the place. In Cambodia, we saw that it was more of a cultural thing where this is when you turn 12, this is how you help support the family. And so it's more welcomed, legitimized there. We've seen where the parents are addicted to drugs and they use their children to help with financing that. And yeah, so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of it, especially in America and North America, is online. And so they're lured online, through games and through different social websites and such. And so a lot of what we want to do is raise awareness and teach families and teach parents and teach kids. We're going into schools teaching kids what to watch for. And when this person says he is a friend that's your age, it could be a 40-year-old guy, or it could be a couple. And so there's a whole bunch of different ways. The movies that you see with the white van pulling up and luring kids with candies isn't as prevalent for sure. from what we see. But yeah, like you said, the promise of a better life, you're sending your child to a different country because you can't support them, and this person said they can, and yeah, there's a whole bunch of different scenarios.
Okay. And what age range are we talking about it? And is it mainly girls, or I'm assuming there's some boys that are trafficked as well, right?
Absolutely. The age ranges from, we've heard stories of newly born babies being abused, and up to however old, right? Our girls in our home are more teenagers, and so they're to we want to have another home. We want we want to have a bunch of homes that help support different groups of people. But my heart is as young as we can help them. That's how we want to do it. But yeah, we had one girl who was 6 years old in Cambodia who was in our home. Her story was that her grandma trafficked her. And then I don't know if the little girl knew that it was her grandma, because she somehow escaped, got back to grandma, and grandma sold her. And that happened twice, 3 times, twice again.
Wow,
So,
that is just
yeah.
heartbreaking. So I mean, these kids basically have been, seriously abused for years. So that's going to have a severe impact. I mean, not just on their physical bodies, but I'm thinking, their emotional, mental, and spiritual health, right? So, what do you do to bring restoration to these kids?
The biggest thing is to have a home that they have a safe family. And obviously we are a faith-based group, so that we know that Jesus is the hope for these girls. But in Mexico, we have psychologists, we have doctors, we have house that are part of their network there, that they are able to have access to counselors and different things. And we know that it's not going to be an overnight thing that, okay, you're rescued, you're safe here,
Right.
you're going to be right. There's lots of trauma that goes through, and you see it differently with different girls. One of our girls that we rescued, she was unvocal for months. She wasn't able to talk. She didn't know how to use the washroom. She didn't know how to use utensils. And so it took a while to kind of just surround her, let her know she's safe, just continue to be constant and stable for her, and she's doing beautifully, and she's still in our home.
Wow. And is this like a partnership with local churches then, like in Mexico, or like who actually gets the hands-on? I mean, of course, there's probably some government people, like you say, psychologists and so forth, and doctors.
Yeah. So the way our home works in Mexico is Not for Sale has their own home. We hire local ladies who live in the home around the clock. There's schedules and different things. So that's our home. But the way that the kids they come to us is through Child and Family Services. So we don't actually go out at the moment and rescue. It's from situations.
That's a whole other ball game that you've got to have some unique skills and frankly be willing to risk your life doing it. Yeah. Wow. Okay. And do the kids learn some skills, pardon me? Like, I mean, they're going to need to be earning a living at some point as well, right? Or maybe they, I don't know if they go into the adoption system. I'm not sure what happens.
Yeah. So when we were in Mexico, when we were in Cambodia, we had a trade that the women and girls learned. They actually sewed all the costumes for the Australian ballet. So they had a contract with that. And then we've seen other ones that they open up a cafe or a barbershop or a bakery. That's our heart. We would love to do that. Our girls are younger now and all going to school. So that's one of the dream homes or dream projects that we have in Mexico, is to have a place where, these girls can learn a trade and have a place that when they're 18, they don't have to feel like they have to be out of our family.
Yeah, okay. How long does it take? I mean, I'm assuming it probably varies from child to child. person to person, to recover though, and do they fully recover? You have stories of kids, now they're becoming adults and they're fully integrated back into society.
Yeah. So one of our girls in Cambodia came through the home and ended up marrying a pastor as a pastor's wife over there, and it's just using her experience to help others. So we've seen that for sure. And like you said, it does vary for sure for girl and different situations and all that. So it's hard to say, but we know that the hope is Jesus. We know that if we can surround them with love and safety, then that's a way better chance of actually healing the trauma.
What can viewers do to help stop human trafficking? Again, most of us aren't going to get out there, and physically rescue kids, dangerous thing, right? But what are our options?
So locally in Alberta, we have different locations that you can hands-on help. We do markets that we need volunteers. So we need people who have a heart for this and have time that they can volunteer. Definitely donating is a huge part. We can't do this without our donors. And it takes quite a bit to run a home in Mexico and to give these girls what they need for safety.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing and for what you're doing today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That's good stuff, isn't it, what they're doing? If you want to be part of it, check it out, Not For Sale, all right, .ca. Joy Lynn Stickle, the Executive Director of Not For Sale. I'm Paul Arthur, and on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thank you so much for watching today.